especially if Collins takes the trophy.
Oh, absolutely. You know, going into this weekend, he was kind of not necessarily out of the discussion, but he was not necessarily a talking point in the Players' Championship race. But this finals appearance and possible champion,
Yeah,
it just
the bubble is
skyrockets
just
him
changing now.
Exactly. There's so much movement on the leaderboard at stake here.
Remember, this is our last Open before the Invitational. And that's when the season concludes. It's at SCGCon in 3 weeks in Roanoke, Virginia. Holland on the play. Collins is on 6 cards, and we'll get to see what which 6 he kept. Looks like Urza, Oko, 3 lands. It is a powerful hand, but a slow hand.
This is fine. So even if it is not necessarily the fastest hand, it is 2 copies of the most important card in the matchup, and that's Oko, Thief of Crowns.
And should here, yeah, John will take 1 copy. Now he has some turns to hopefully find something like another Thoughtseize, a Snapcaster, a Stubborn Denial. Maybe he'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Collins will pick up cards. No plays so far. And what a draw. I was going to say, this is probably his best draw. Arkham's Astrolabe.
Oof.
And into Mox Opal. Okay, so
That's a strong one.
This hand's improving very quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we find a Bauble on the next turn, and we now have a turn 2 Oko. And he'll actually make Mox Opal now. Wants to get that in before Stubborn Denial could be on the table. Yeah, on John's side, just thinking, really? Did you have to do that?
Oh, but was that an Inquisition off the top?
Didn't get a good look at it. Here's Thought Scour, Battle Rage, and Shadow into the graveyard. He didn't have the land. He passed.
Oh,
he passes.
No.
Yeah. And that makes sense. You have to dig for the land. Now, Collins' start is slow, which means John gets 1 more turn. But this was all about tempo. Collins had no plays until turn 3, and John had this huge window to just get out ahead and really close out the game. And by missing the land drop, he's given the tempo back.
Right, and, you know, it's not entirely over. You don't have to have a creature in play for Stubborn Denial to counter an Oko.
No, but if John misses his land drop again and you're Collins, why risk it? Why make Oko on 3? Just wait.
Sure.
But the land's here.
There
and maybe,
it is.
There we go. Maybe that'll be enough. It is Gurmag Angler, but John tapping out for it means this is just an elk.
Yeah, this is an interesting line here, and it may just be that he has a creature-clogged hand.
Yeah.
And the plan is to instead try to pressure Oko.
You know, it's interesting, right? I mean, what it tells me is that John just doesn't have the Stubborn Denial. Now, does he want... Doing this play tells Collins that, too. And I'm not sure he wants to tell Collins that.
Sure. Something that Holland's been very good at in this top 8 so far has been picking his spots and figuring out how to prioritize his cards accordingly. So here, this is telling me that his plan is going to involve trying to overload the Oko rather than just beat it outright or preempt it.
We see from Collins, it will be the Planeswalker. He will elk the Gurmag Angler. Now, from Holland's side, he's got to have another Thoughtseize then, right? Urza's coming up next turn.
Ugh.
And on this board, the Urza Construct would be the same size as the elk. Maybe even bigger, depending on what Collins draws. I mean, he actually has Sword of the Meek, so it'd be a 4/4. Thought Scour for Holland. Mills over. That's the Thoughtseize he needed. Picks up Steam Vents, okay.
A red source is something here.
I guess a red source means if he has Temur Battle Rage, he could just take care of the Oko.
Right, and, you know, honestly, Urza's not that impressive on his own. That's not to say he's nothing, but it won't be doing that much if it's only, say, making a 3/3 construct.
And that's the play. Battle Rage the Elk, take care of the Planeswalker. I don't mind it. 1 card down. All of this is lining up in a way that it feels like if Holland had hit these lands a turn earlier, he would have run away with this one, but now he has to fight for it.
Oh, wow, look at that. That was a metallic rebuke off the top.
That's going to make things harder for Holland. Because this Urza now has a way to protect itself. Now Collins actually doesn't have a payoff yet, so maybe this is okay.
Does Urza count as a payoff?
Eventually. It just takes a while.
Right, right. He can even just take a few hits from this elk here.
Passes. He chose there not to. Yeah, and this might be a tell. There's sort of the Mikas in his hand. He could have cast it. Now he's not going to because Collins wants to leave up Metallic Rebuke.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if Holland knows.
He doesn't know about the sword?
Right.
Okay. Fatal Push on the Construct. Collins could Rebuke here. Not sure if he wants to. This isn't targeting Teferi, or Urza rather, so maybe it's okay.
This is a spot where you're almost priced into it. If you wait that long, it signals that you likely have the Rebuke.
Right.
And it's not getting better against the pile of 1-drops that has 3 lands in play.
Love this from Holland. Now fetches, and this was a really good timing. It actually drew out the Rebuke. If he played the fetch first, he wouldn't have gotten it.
Right.
But yeah, now gets to fetch. Revolt is now online, and Urza should be taken care of here. Or do you think it's the Construct?
It could just be a big Death Shadow.
Well, if there is a push, and I believe there is a push in John's hand, which creature do you go for?
Oh, Urza.
Okay.
Easy Urza. It's not that difficult for a Death Shadow to outsize the Construct.
Sure. That was kind of my thought here.
If you're at the point where your opponent has, say, 7 artifacts on the battlefield, then nothing was really saving you.
Urza's gone. Elk swings. Collins to 14. Is there a follow-up threat? A Death Shadow, maybe. Yes, there is. It's a 5/5. Holland down to 1 card, but he has managed the board so far. Draw is a fetch land for Collins. That's no help. He's got a 3/3 Construct. It can become a 5/6 if it picks up this sword.
That's pretty good against this Death Shadow.
Yeah, it means that John would have to lose another life for the Death Shadow to attack through. And sort of the Meeks to play. The Construct picks up, so that's the 5/6 we mentioned. Collins could attack. That would be... Just kidding. Don't do that.
that would be bold and brash.
Yeah, that might not work out well. The counter swing would be for 13. Oh, I'm at 14, of course. Why would I not do that?
It sounds perfect. I only need my last life.
Yeah. What, is he going to lose another life point or something? No way. Collins equips. 1 card now in hand for each player. For Collins, it's a fetch land. And for John, it's Dismember. Oh my.
Oh.
Okay. Holland goes down to 4. The Construct is gone. So a shock land or a fetch land off the top wins the game for Holland. And Collins going to play the last land, so now he knows
Street Wraith.
Yeah, anything that can deal 2 damage. Yeah, that's in the graveyard. So top card, and both Collins is just vulnerable to it. Anyway, doesn't have it. So it looks like Collins going to get another turn. Yeah, swings here. That is for 12. Collins to 2.
I'm not positive I like attacking with the Angler here unless you have a removal spell, because then you're dead to an Oko.
You are dead to an Oko here. You're right. He's given his opponent an out. Does Collins draw it? It's Gilded Goose. No. This keeps him alive, though, doesn't it?
This reminds me of my favorite Bee Gees song.
Which song would that be, Emma?
I think it's something like Duck, Duck, Goose. Oh, no, Staying Alive. Staying Alive.
It's Grey Duck, though, also. Swinging, Goose is gone, and John takes game 1.
And that Gurmag, I want to go back to that Gurmag Angler coming down before the Oko.
Right.
That was so clean in a way to actually answer the Oko when he didn't have a counterspell at the time. That was the only way that he was going to be able to keep up on the battlefield, was if he ripped the red source to cast the Battle Rage to kill the Oko. I think that was Holland kind of picking a spot and saying, all right, if this doesn't work, then I lose, but this is the way that I win the game.
Players are going to talk through our sideboards in a second here. Though if you haven't had a chance this weekend to look at our weekly sale, make sure you get a chance to head over to our website, starcitygames.com/sale. Different item on sale each week. This week we've been doing non-English cards. You can go ahead and check out selection and pick some up. Saw John Holland 2-0 this in the semis. He is on his way to a repeat performance in the finals. Gurmag Anglers have just been very powerful in this matchup.
Yeah, that card's incredible. It can't be fatal pushed. It probably can't be drowned in the lock. Drowned in the lock.
Drowned. Would that be drowned in the lock or drowned in the locked? Because it's like a proper noun.
Yeah, I don't.
But you're also using a noun as a verb, so that's super weird.
Have you ever tried to drown a fish, Matthias?
Not since last round.
Did you do it last round,
You
Matthias?
said tried, you know. We saw someone else try. I've watched other people try. It didn't really work. What they weren't able to.
Sometimes if you want something done right.
But we saw Royal Scions, very good for Holland in the top 4. After seeing that, I can't imagine that he's not going to put the second one in.
Yeah, the nice thing about Holland here is he's had a little bit of practice boarding for this matchup at this point.
For those who join us, Simic Warza has just been the breakout deck of this tournament. 5 copies of it in the top 8. 4 of the same team. It was Team Lotus Box's tournament. We've had a lot of Warza on day 2, but specifically this build, to me, stands above the rest.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just something that it felt like rather than trying to be a straight-up artifact deck like the Warza decks are, the more traditional 4-color or 3-color variants that we saw Eli Cassis make the top 8 with, this is a more controlling shell that leans on food and then happens to have a bunch of artifact payoffs in order to capitalize on the fact that that food, that's just a bunch of free artifacts being generated with cards that care about you having a bunch of artifacts.
In a lot of ways, this feels like a Jund deck to me, where it's just a pile of pretty good cards. I was actually, one of the pretty wild things I was talking to some pilots about this weekend, they're saying, when they go for the control strategy out of the sideboard, sometimes they board out a couple of Mox Opals.
I saw that. I've seen some players with Mox Opals still in their deck box and post-board games.
Yeah. And, that's pretty new. When you think about Mox Opal in any deck in Modern, you never go beneath 4 ever.
Right, but if your plan is to take, 10, 11 turns, who cares if you have 4 mana on turn 3?
Yeah, and so what it changes is most Mox Opal decks are Mox Opal decks. It is most decks that register it is the best card in their deck.
Right.
It's a Mox. This is not a Mox Opal deck. It's just a deck that gets
to play.
Yeah.
We are on the exact same page.
And that's just a frightening sentence to say. This is a Jund deck that just gets to have Mox in it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's great.
That's so good for it.
Remember when Deathrite Shaman was good in Jund? What if it just cost, you just got your mana on turn right away?
Oh, yeah,
you got
it's
up
great.
front.
You get to play this graveyard card in everything.
Yeah. Those really good rate cards, what if you got to play all of them a turn earlier?
Right. Also, you just randomly get some of the most busted cards in the game right now because they happen to care about artifacts.
Yeah, things like Emery.
Yeah.
Which has just been incredible in this deck.
Yeah, being able to rebuy engineered explosives is comical.
Yeah, what we've been seeing this weekend is it's a creature with a tap ability that can tap to either draw a card, make a permanent mana source, or play a removal spell.
Right. Those are your modes?
Yeah, those are your modes. It's like Snapcaster Mage, but it just taps each turn.
Right, it's absolutely incredible. And because you have Astrolabe and Mox Opal, you can even make big engineered explosives.
Sure. So some setup here from both players. And Colin's actually not going for that second Astrolabe just yet.
Communicates a Metallic Rebuke from his hand.
Like that, Colin. We saw before, at least Zan in this matchup leaned harder into the control strategy post-board. Zan and Colin's teammates, they've discussed this matchup, and I would expect a similar approach from Collins.
Mm-hmm.
On Holland's side, down to 12. That means it is time for Death's Shadow. We'll see if that earns a rebuke out of Collins.
Oh my gosh, it has 1 power and 1 toughness?
You could...
What a bargain.
You could drown it. Yeah, 1 mana, 1/1.
Have you ever tried to drown a shadow?
So I have a question then. If my shadow is cast on the water, is the shadow drowning?
I have a feeling Mullen might answer that question for us.
This is where we need a philosophy major.
Or a flavor judge. Same thing.
Death Shadow, it looks like actually it's just going to resolve. So Let's see on Colin's side. Actually, yeah, the reason he didn't cast anything that second turn, just didn't really have much to cast. Do see Emery was picked up there. It's going to go for, now is the drown in the lock. He'll go for that play.
He's playing around stubborn and
Yeah, I was saying, this is some real patience from Collins. He has had Oko in hand there.
Right, and the idea here is just you don't have to rush things. You're expecting this game to take several turns. Just make your cards line up against Holland's favorably.
And now with no rebuke up, Collins will find the window to make the second astrolabe here. So far he's managed the board. Remaining hand is 2 Mystic Sanctuaries, Oko and Emery.
And we see Mullen getting a little punished here for fetching up this basic forest. He'd like to have those sanctuaries come into play untapped in order to recur things, but that's just not going to happen unless he finds another land here.
And I was going to say, what card would punish Collins for this tap out? And this is just the perfect answer from Holland. It's can't really be hit by Oko. It's the Royal Scions. He loots. Like, sure, the Elk will show up, but this is a really good answer.
Exactly. This is something that we saw Holland use to take Zane out of the entire tournament last round.
Now Collins has some choices. Urza was the pickup this turn.
Urza's a punishing thing to follow up with.
Urza making a construct will have 3 mana. Could make multiple plays. Can't quite make Urza and Oko. He's short the green mana for that. But Urza and Emery an option here. Or could just make
is
Oko.
That all?
And we start with Emery. And this is just, again, some of the impressive stuff. Looks like it's going to be Emery and Oko. But the Urza deck, despite being this having this artifact synergy to it, when you get to play cards like Emery and Oko, it's just a good cards deck.
Right. And it looks like here Mullen is just kind of prioritizing pressuring this Scion and trying to check boxes and say, all right, how do I lose the game? Let's stop that from happening.
Here is Oko. Astrolabe becomes a 3/3, attacks down the Scions, and there's just so many things going on Colin's side of the board now that Grixis Death Shadow is a tempo deck, and it becomes harder to come back from here.
Right, and here's the problem. Look at Holland's graveyard. He just hasn't had any disruption this game. Mullen has just got to play his cards.
And that's something I think I would have liked to see more of out of the deck. You either need to be fast or be disruptive. I'm not sure that John was either this game.
Yeah. Just feels like he hoped a Royal Scions would go uncontested, and that's not the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, he found a window to resolve it, but without any other pressure. It's, Heads Up does not actually fight Oko very well.
Exactly. How wild is it that, other than the Astrolabes, all these permanents are standard legal?
They're all from Throne of Eldraine.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, the new set's pretty good. It's got some powerful cards. Some Mystic Sanctuaries in Collins' hand.
No big deal.
Had a drown in the lock this game. Yeah, it's doing okay. Eldraine's doing okay. John gonna try to see what he can do. Shocks in a watery grave. It's going to be a fatal push. So Emery's gone. That's a start. Here's Snapcaster Mage. Here's another fatal push. The Elk gone too. The Elk's gone too.
Okay, so this is a start. It's not something that I would call ideal, but it's at least keeping him in this game.
So back to Collins we go. Still has managed to keep his Oko. And looks like other Astrolabe will suit up. That'll attack in at the Scions. They are now down to 1. And it's just hard to fight fair. Even if it's Snapcaster Mages and Fatal Pushes, Oko is so powerful that John's still on the wrong side of this.
Right, and there's a point where you want to think that maybe a Royal Scions and a Temur Battle Rage means you can pressure Oko, but that's just not the case with Mullen's setup here.
Drawing the lock on top of the deck, we see Urza and a Construct token from Collins.
That's a baby construct.
It's just a 1/1. If only there's a Sword of the Meek in the graveyard. He'd pick it up.
It'd be a 3/4.
Back to John we go. Gurmag Angler. And these are actually the most powerful cards we see from Grixis in the late game, right? We see a Planeswalker, we see Snapcaster Mage, we see Gurmag Angler. This is really the best shot he can give, but it shows...
It doesn't feel close.
It doesn't feel close. You'd say, oh, he's not drawing his good cards, but he really is.
Right.
Scions can give first strike and +2/+0 to the Snapcaster.
So the nice thing is we see a Dismember hiding out in Holland's hand. This also gives trample.
Right.
So there's a chance that depending on how Mullen blocks, this could end up being really good for him.
But no matter which way you slice it, though, you can't actually kill the Oko. You see here, Oko goes down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like Thoughtseize still in Holland's hand, and Dismember's there as well. He's going to go to 7 to dismember. Looks like the Urza.
And this is Holland just trying to check Mullen's card advantage engines.
Right.
So this next turn...
Drown in the lock. Yep.
Yep, there's a Drown of the Lock coming on the top, and there's an Oko that's going to generate a card or some sort of actual advantage, resource advantage. And then from there, Holland's hopefully going to get the chance to attack down this Oko and be close to at parity. Most of these plays have just been him trying to claw back from being behind, which is historically something that Death Shadow can struggle to do a little bit.
Collins, John's put up a pretty good fight here. I think he's kept it close, but Collins still feels like he has the upper hand, and right now, trying to figure out where he wants to go with it.
Mullen is not far from just turning the corner on his own.
It's going to be a swing with the Elk. Going at, I believe, Royal Scions. I mean, the Angler looks like it can just block.
Oh, this is clever. So, if the Gurmag Angler blocks the Elk, then post-combat, Oko can turn the Gurmag Angler into a 3/3 with 3 damage on it.
Okay, yeah, and you see John paused, but then figured it out. And so he'll just actually let the Planeswalker go. And now, yes, the Angler does become an Elk.
And for Holland, the question was more or less, would you rather have a 3/3 Elk or a Royal Scions at 2
Right.
loyalty? And when you're trying to pressure a Planeswalker, the answer is almost assuredly you would prefer to have a 3/3.
So 2 creatures left to try to pressure Oko. Both players, though, know that Drown in the Lock is in Collins' hand. That could take care of either of these creatures. And swings in. So Construct, currently a 1-1 in front of the Gurmag Angler.
This may be the window if Holland has something.
Yeah. Can't. So Drown the Lock takes care of the Snapcaster Mage. Yeah, you still can't Drown in the Lock the Angler. Still has CMC 7. Only 5 cards in Holland's graveyard. And yeah, Holland has maybe gotten back in this. It's a Thoughtseize. That's not going to help its Mystic Sanctuary.
That's going to get this 3/3 out of the way, and this
Right.
Oko might actually just close the door in the next turn or two with regular combat damage.
Right. Yeah, draws a fetch land for Collins. Oko makes a food token. Yeah, you think you just swing in with the Elk?
It's very likely.
Yeah, Holland down to 2. Wouldn't be surprised if we just put Drown the Lock back on top. So we see, yeah, the swing into 2, Drown back on top. He says maybe this is just good enough.
Mm-hmm. There are going to be 2 lethal attackers next turn at the very least.
And Holland can't do anything about it. So we are headed to a 3rd game here. Collins Mullen, not going to go down easily here, picks up the win.
And just look at how impactful that Oko was in that game.
Yeah.
It ruled everything.
And you mentioned before that Oko was, in your mind, the best card against Grishka's Death Shadow.
Yeah, so a lot of the removal are things like Drown in the Lock, Fatal Push, things that are going to be able to mop up the creatures on Holland's side or Mullen's side. They have these similar interaction packages, and both are kind of bad at dealing with planeswalkers. Oko is much better at protecting himself than the Scions are protecting themselves. And that the fact that it can be proactive on its own without any other resources just puts it over the top here.
Well, let's get ready for game number 3. A big match here for Collins Mullen with some Players' Championship implications.
It's been a while, but I feel like I've seen this movie before. Pass the turn back. Is it a top deck? Oh it's my God! Pendlehaven! Pump and attack? Is this real? Oh my God! Oh no! Oh my goodness! Oh my God!
Coming up, just a month and a half away, we have the Players' Championship back for the first time in 3 years.
Unbelievably excited for that one.
Already starting to get a picture of who's going to be in it. We had 3 people qualify in Season 1. One invitational winner. We have Colin Roundtree, Oliver Tomiko, Matthew Dilks. All going to be there.
Abe Corrigan, and can't forget Joe Lissette, our current reigning Players' Champion.
So I have 11 more spots up for grabs. Colin's trying to make it, see if he can nab one of those.
And, you know, a win here would put it right in arm's reach.
Yeah, win or loss, Collins is going to be in the discussion in 3 weeks when we're at the Invitational. That's thanks to this second place finish already. Now, if it's first place finish, it just gets even more in the discussion.
Point is, we're going to be talking about Collins.
A couple other players look like they have locked up spots. Looking here, Jeremy Bertarioni, Zan Sayed, Harlan Fear. It'd be pretty difficult to see any of them missing at this point. Mm-hmm. Dominic Harvey also.
Oh, yeah, he won our Standard Classic. Got a picture of him over on the website just about an hour or so ago.
So Collins is kept on 6. He's on the draw. Here we go for the deciding game in Atlanta, starting on a cycled Street Wraith from our Death Shadow player.
Okay, so there's not a hand disruption piece here, and that's kind of been part of Holland's formula for success.
Right, just on the fetch land, he'll start out. Collins with Gilded Goose. Looks like multiple copies of Drown in the Lock in the hand. But he actually doesn't have a graveyard yet.
Okay, so this comes down to Holland needing to be one of two things, and it's an aspect we were talking about before this. You either need to be very disruptive or you need to be very fast. So without knowing exactly the contents of his hand right now, the fact that he doesn't have that turn 1 Thoughtseize implies that he likely has some number of Death Shadows in his hand.
Yeah, how about a turn 1 Fetch, Shock, Dismember? So he's down to 11. That certainly sounds like a Death Shadow.
I've always jokingly called Grixis Death Shadow pay 11 life tempo for a reason.
Yeah. He's going to go one better. I think he's going to pay 12.
Look,
I
Holland
mean, yeah,
has his eyes on the prize.
Look, that's how you become a champion. You take the pay 11 deck and you pay an extra.
They told me to pay 11. I said no.
I'll go to 8, thank you. Down to 8. Now he has Death Shadow. And these are the scary hands you can see out of Grixis Shadow.
It's fast.
It's fast. I was going to say Shadow plus Stubborn Denial is terrifying. 2 Shadows, I'll take that also.
How do you feel about eat your first turn play, 10 power on turn 2?
Yeah, this is the dumb stuff that Grixis Shadow does. So yeah, I had a turn 1 hard removal spell, turn 2 pair 5/5s.
Oh, you have 2 Drown in the Locks? That's so
not fast
cool.
enough.
Are
Yeah.
you going to have time to cast both of them?
Yeah. One of them, I think, might even be an Assassin's Trophy, but you're looking at Collins and just think, what? Okay. I mean, on Collins' you just have to hope that John's next turn isn't Fetch, Shock, Stubborn Denial, like the Thoughtseize is all together. There's just nothing.
Right.
You can't do anything about that.
Oh, and that other land's a Scalding Tarn, so it's going to be a Fetch Shock if Mullen wants to cast either of those.
And then that's what it's going to be. I mean, Collins can't sit here and do nothing. But this is John just pushing the game to the edge immediately.
Oh, absolutely. And these are the risks that you have to take.
So it's Watergrave. Collins to 15. Drown the Lock, and it looks like Assassin's Trophy both in hand.
All right, a Shock Land and a Battle Rage is game.
I mean, yeah, Grixis could be messed up. Here's Drown the Lock. Does John just have the turn 3 through the removal spell?
Step 1.
Step 1, Fetch Shock down to 5. Now it's an 8/8. A Battle Rage or does end the game.
Are we going to see it?
Down to 5. Feels like it's not there. I mean, he'll just have to swing for 8.
Listen, you got to let Mullen cut.
Yeah.
And then you Battle Rage.
2 mana, 3. It is the Royal Scions.
Okay.
So this means it's going to be an attack for 10. It also means that Collins, the Assassin's Trophy, might be good enough to keep him alive.
So here's the thing. You see this Royal Scions?
That
represents something in the ballpark of 5 damage.
Right. Collins really would like to Assassin's Trophy the Royal Scions, but he does not have the time to do that.
Exactly. You have to deal with this Death Shadow or you will literally die.
Yeah, if he draws Fatal Push, maybe he can do both. If he has the mana. I think it's actually... I don't think he does, though. It's Urza, Emery, Trophy.
Right, and the fact that this Scions is giving the Death Shadow trample, normally Mullen would want to save this Mishra's Bauble in order to make his Emery cost 1 mana, but he needs to just find other tools.
Yeah, there's no time. John has just condensed the time of this game. You don't get to leverage plays. You have to just play everything as quick as possible. Now the draw was Engineered Explosives, and for a second, I actually thought it could be better if Collins had found the 3rd land. He would have been able to play Explosives, get rid of Death Shadow that way, and then trophy the Scions. But instead, he just has to trophy away the Shadow.
So playing it this way, I believe if he finds a mana source off the top here, he will get to Engineered Explosives away the Royal Scions before
it ultimates.
Right.
Yeah, both players are at 5, and now it gets interesting. Collins does have Explosives and Urza and Emery in hand, so actually he can rebuild. But John gets to rebuild too, and the Scions helps him find the way to rebuild. Looking at an extra card every turn. Just needs a threat. Scions up to 7. He will loot, draw, and discard. Did he find something? He discards a bauble. That's a good sign.
Yeah, that means it's not a land.
Right, because this is the kind of point in the game where Death Shadow always discards lands. And Gurmag Angler, that seems great.
This one, very good against Engineered Explosives.
Great against Engineered Explosives. Collins is at 5. This is a pretty perfect draw. It can trample its way through an Emery.
This is what it takes. This is what what Holland needed to find.
And it's a metallic rebuke. I don't know that Collins has a way to survive. Even his chump blocker, not good enough. Explosives on 0. Makes Emery cheaper. And but Scion's grants trample. Top 4 into the graveyard. John's thinking about responding.
I believe Holland has something like a Colligon's command here.
Anything in, it's a pass. It is Colligan's command, and that's just the icing on the top. And Collins extends the hand. So it is John Holland, our 1 seed, undefeated today here on Sunday.